Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette, and we're glad you're here to stay curious. For more than 20 years, the American Space Museum has been preserving the birth of America's wonderful space age right in the delivery room of that miraculous space age here in Brevard County, Florida. And we hope that you come and visit our museum. We're wide open. We want you to see our one of a kind exhibits. There's so many things in here you'll never see anywhere else. And yet we know that we're a small, humble museum, a nonprofit that reaches out for your help to sustain us, and you have, and we really appreciate that. None more than this Stay Curious program that Marty Winkle, my cameraman and co producer, and myself started in March 2020. And we've taken it to a new level with these beautiful graphics, thanks to Jessica Galloway and her talents. And the three of us have become a real good team in the last few months here to bring you some very entertaining programs. Tomorrow, we're going to have a wonderful conversation with Martin McClellan. He is an engineer who worked on decontaminating spacecraft, particularly the Hubble telescope, getting rid of all the germs on these spacecraft so they don't pollute planets or the rest of the solar system. So Martin McClellan's going to be here tomorrow. Can't wait for that. He's also a Via Space engineer, and Via Space is our hometown rocket company. So we'll be talking a little about that, but mostly about Martin's involvement with contamination of spacecraft and things he did to combat that. So, but first on our minds on Stay Curious today, and we hope that you're watching us on Facebook Live or YouTube or Twitch. YouTube, we are so grateful for you YouTube followers like Robert Law in Dundee, Scotland, is watching on his gigantic TV as he's enjoying his cocktail. Hey, Robert. Hope everything's getting a little bit chilly there in your neck of the woods. It's getting chillier here. But thanks for 1,000 people now watching us in 4K. And that is big progress on YouTube. We've reached the 1,000 level on YouTube, thanks to a lot of you. Some of you switched from Facebook over there. That is so important in monetizing our social media presence for our nonprofit. And you can go back and rewatch stuff, but like us, share us, follow us, subscribe to us, tell your friends about us, because we put together a program weekdays that we feel has got content you're not going to get anywhere else. And sometimes we hit the mark, sometimes we hit a home run, sometimes but doing this every day for a year and a half, we've had a lot of fun, and we certainly appreciate you along for the ride, like Apollo's son out there in Brian Morrison in Tampa, Dan Vranick in Fort Wayne, Indiana. He's probably taken some moon pictures through his telescope this week. We've even got Tesla Tovia in Russia and George Triolos in Cyprus watching us. So we are now trying to get on YouTube 4,000 watch hours on there, and we're a little over 1,000 with our subscribers. So crank up that YouTube, put American Space Museum up there, and watch some beautiful content. Learn a little bit about space history, and hear some interesting conversations with space workers and astronauts. And we know that Larry Pusker and his friend Dave Stang up there in Michigan, they are. I found out that you two guys are buddies when I saw them posting a picture of them freezing to death up there on Lake Erie, trying to stay warm around a fire. And we'll take a little of that cold down here. It's starting to get sweater weather down here, and we're appreciating that down here in Central Florida. So I also want a big shout out to Tom Usiak, launch photographer for the shuttle. Tom and I had a conversation. He and his brother Mark Usiak are giving us a lot of their shuttle library to use at our museum any way we wish. This is one of the pictures back here that they've given us, and they like the show, and they've been watching us since the beginning. And thank you for the compliments, Tom. And Jessica certainly has taken us a long way, Marty, from our old school way of doing it. But we'll get back to old school once in a while. I got a few old school displays for you here today. But we want to talk about our astronauts, our hero astronauts up there in space right now. These 7 individuals are Expedition 65, which is winding down, all right? And we're getting ready for 4 of them to come back to Earth. Probably the first week of November, right after we launch Crew the next crew here, Crew 3, Dragon Crew 3, all right, is going to launch Saturday, October 30th at 2:32 in the morning, 2:32 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. They will go up and probably take 5 or 6 hours to get up there. Yes, and I wanted to go through their names here. We got a comment.
Christopher Mick said excited for the Crew 3 now scheduled for 10:31. I don't know. Is it for 10:31 or is it 10:30?
Did they push it back a day? Okay.
We'll verify.
Yeah, we'll verify that if he says it is. But
somebody wants to pre-order a shirt.
Right, and we are you can pre-order shirts with us by going to info@americanspacemuseum.com. Tell us you want to buy a shirt, we'll mail it to you with the cost of postage. The shirts are how much, Marty, for Crew 3?
Probably $20.
Probably $20. And Marty's out there selling them no matter what time of day it is on the launches. Just one of the ways that this fantastic man helps support our museum. And Marty's added so much to this program, what we've been doing the last year and a half. But yes, it's a fluid situation, but we do have Saturday the 30th at 2:32 a.m. If it moved to Sunday morning the 31st, I think that moves the time about 25 minutes or something earlier. So but at any rate, this crew's going up next, and that includes, left there is Thomas Mashburn, who was on 2 space shuttle flights. I remember to correct myself. STS-127 was his space shuttle mission, and then he was part of Expedition 34, going up to space in a Soyuz capsule. He's got 161 days in space, Tom Mashburn does there on the left. He's from Statesville, North Carolina, my hometown, and my astronomy buddy, Ronnie Sherrill. Hey, shout out to you, Ronnie. And you'll be seeing some of his astrophotography in the near future on our Stay Curious program. In the middle there, you have an India native astronaut, Rajesh Chari. He's actually the commander and lead of this Crew Dragon capsule that they named Endurance. And Matthias Maurer is the European Space Agency astronaut there in the center. And to the right is Kayla Barron. All right. And Kayla Barron and Matthias Maurer and Rajay Chari are all rookies. So we're going to be adding 3 more names to our orbital astronauts. That brings us up to 577, I think, humans that orbited the Earth. And then, of course, once Kayla gets up there, we'll add another lady, and I believe that'll make 68 women that have been to space. So we love our astronauts. You're going to have a scorecard to keep a track here at the end of the month. What's going to be happening? Who's going to be coming up? Who's going to be coming down? And when they do go up there, this crew of 4 to join the 7 up there, that's 11, and we've got 3 Chinese astronauts orbiting the Earth in their new space station, including a woman that's taken her second flight up there. So that'll give us 14 human beings in space here the first week of November. And Marty, I think that's a record. Marty researched a little bit the other day, and 13 is the most humans that have been in space at one time when we combine the shuttle, docked to the International Space Station, and a Soyuz crew was in space too at the same time. So that'll be exciting to have 14 people in space, the most in human history. And that's what it's all about, whether you want to argue about an astronaut, are they an astronaut or not. You go to space, this is what we're all dreaming about for 50 years, is space travel becoming commonplace. And we're at the cusp of that. You're witnessing history every time new crews go to space. So, excuse me. Let me get a drink here real quick. Apologize for that, but we wanted to feature on our show today Space Transportation System number 634 that was launched 32 years ago yesterday, October 18th, 1989 is when, do I have that crew picture up here? There they are. There's the crew of 5 that was launched. The commander was Don Williams on the right. Mike McCulley, friend of our museum, a great guy. This was his one and only flight as a pilot. He became the president and CEO of United Space Alliance that launched the shuttle as its main contractor over all the contractors in the last 10 years of the 30-year program. Marty drew a paycheck from them working on the launch process systems. Marty worked on the computers on the engines. Marty also worked on the Grumman lunar module in the 60s. We'll talk about that in a minute, and some comments Marty had about the radioisotope thermal generators that went on this mission on Galileo, because Galileo was going to Jupiter too far away. They didn't have solar panels that would work that well that far away. And it was such a big deal that protesters were big time at the Cape. They could, outside the gate, a judge had to rule whether the spacecraft could be launched or not. They had a judge take it, assess the risk. And I have here one of the first things that caught my eye in this museum was this. We have got these scrapbooks put together by a gentleman in Michigan. And this gentleman took newspaper stories, and I'm going to turn the page here to see if it shows the newspapers he used there, because this is very interesting. There's some of the newspapers that he used at his local newsstand. Okay, go find a local newsstand, Marty, somewhere now, and try to buy you a New York Times or a Chicago Tribune. All right, some of these papers don't even exist anymore. And he had all the missions in here, this gentleman did, and clipped out the stories. And it was one of the first things that caught my eye 5 years ago when I met the people at this museum, and then loved it so much that I moved down here. This tells the story about all the shuttle launches, but what stories aren't told here that the normal people see and know about? So quite a warehouse. This gentleman donated these to our museum. And here's the pages about the STS-35 mission that you cannot believe the press that was given to protesters of the nuclear isotope that was being used as the energy source. I'll flip it that way, Marty, just to give you guys an idea. Galileo set the sail. All right, here's the launch of it. Beautiful stuff in there. And I'm going to pull out a couple pages of this to show you up close. Of the big brouhaha over this. Now, it is a serious thing when you're talking about radioactivity, and that you don't want to hurt anybody. But this radioisotope thermal generator, there are several of them built over history. They contain plutonium-238, and a quick lesson. If you've got this radioactive material that's emitting heat, you can harness that heat and turn it into electricity. That is what an RTG does. And I'm going to show you one up close here in a minute. Here is the USA Today editorial page. On one side, an editorial writer says it's safe, and on the other side, he says it's not safe, okay? Danger is too slight to hold Galileo back, and then another commentator, danger is too great, hold Galileo's launch, all right? Just like any time in human history, people have opposing views about anything, okay? And we do hope that William Shatner has cleared up for everybody that the world is round, because he saw it, and he says it's round and not flat. But there's people that are arguing with me about that also, that the Earth is flat. To them, I say, okay, where's the Flat Mars Society and the Flat Venus Society? Sign me up. But anyway, just pointing out that this was a hotly debated topic. Marty remembers this. You told me a little bit about it beforehand, Marty, that he worked on the shuttle and went out to work every day out Cape Kennedy as a contractor. And you could see some of the protesters on the streets, and they were lined up at certain entrances they were allowed to be at. And one entrance they were allowed at on Route 3 at the south end, were they?
I think the main gate.
Oh, the main gate out there. So it's America, and then they protested peacefully. A radioisotope thermal generator, RTG, basically looks like this. They don't have to be very big. And it's just a cord that they insert into a device that provides energy for anything. So when you go out past Mercury. I mean, when you go, space probes go past Mars, they particularly need radioisotope energy because the solar panels aren't big enough. But that's not the case now, where solar panels have been improved, and in fact, several of the spacecraft are now have solar panels on them, including the one we just launched, Lucy. Lucy's got huge solar panels on it that's going out to Jupiter. All right. But I want to tell you that radio RTGs are very common in spacecraft. I count 12 spacecraft that gone to the planets, and 6 Apollo ALSEP science labs were used. The Apollo Lunar Surface ALSAP. Apollo Lunar Science Experiments was ALSAP. And we'll talk about Apollo 13s here in a minute, because it didn't make it to the moon. Curiosity and Perseverance on Mars have these RTGs on them. Viking 1 and 2 landers had nuclear power. Galileo, of course, launched 32 years ago in STS-34, had the RTG. Ulysses, which was a solar mission still working, has one. Cassini to Saturn. New Horizons to Pluto. You can't get solar panels to work 4 billion miles away to Pluto, so we needed to have nuclear energy. And it's still working, and New Horizons is now some almost 8 billion miles from Earth and still providing information. Pioneers 10 and 11 in the 70s, as well as Voyager 1 and 2, had RTGs, as well as the Nimbus satellite, and Russia put several things in Earth orbit that had RTGs, and a failed Mars 96 launch had 2 RTGs on board with 200 grams of plutonium, and they landed somewhere in China when the landing didn't. So taken very seriously, but the RTGs are fueled by a pellet like this that's about half the size of your fist, and this is actually glowing red plutonium. There's Mike McCulley looking good with Ellen Baker. They were both on their first missions, and you know, Mike was a pilot, and we've interviewed him on Stay Curious, and I got to say, Mike, you were just a one and done astronaut, and why was that? And he said, Mark, I was the first of 7 pilots in my class to fly. When I went to the office and asked them when was I going to fly again, they said, well, we got 6 other pilots to cycle ahead of you. It's probably going to be 3 or 4 years. And Mike made the decision that he didn't want to wait that long, and he went into business and become a well-respected leader of United Space Alliance, the main contractor over the shuttle era on there. Here are some protesters. Keep Jupiter nuke-free. Protesters expand their fight to scrub NASA's Galileo mission. I mean, they took it to a circuit judge and had it ruled on that. And then after the mission, they monitored the radiation from COCO. There's a person walking around with a radioactive detector and Geiger counter. There you go. Not crazy stuff, but I asked Marty. He was working on the lunar modules that went to the moon. All of them had an RTG in them. There it is right there, Marty. All right, this is the energy source for the Apollo science experiments that were set up on Apollo 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17. And they're still operating some of those experiments because of this radioactive energy. 49 years later or longer, they're working there. These were in what we call Quad 3 on the bottom section, the descent stage of the lunar module. That's to the first side panel next to the left of the landing, the ladder, trying to say.
Right, facing the right side.
Facing the right side's Quad 1?
You're facing the lunar module, you said Quad 3.
I said Quad 1's on the left of the landing, of the ladder. Is that right? Yeah, all right, that's right. Well, I asked Marty, was there any special when he was working around that? any special barriers or cautions because the radioisotope was probably put in this while it was in the operations and checkout that was once called the Manned Space Operations Building, yeah, MSOB. And but Marty said there was nothing special, no warnings or like that. However, he does remember the protesters during STS-34. And here is go back to this one there. Here is the RTG that flew on Cassini that gave us those great images for 12 years around around Saturn with a NASA engineer. She's got a Geiger counter there. Obviously, she's not dressed in any particular way except what she came to work in, so there's no risk there. So very interesting. 32 years ago, the big hubbub about launching STS-34. It was a quick 5-day mission to space and back. The main job to get the Galileo spacecraft in Earth's orbit, then a solid rocket booster sent it to Jupiter to do its fabulous 10-year mission to show us close-up Jupiter. And on our Stargazer MarQ Monday that you can watch anytime, we featured Jupiter and talked about the Juno probe that is orbiting the largest planet in our solar system right now. But it does have gigantic solar panels on them. Each one's about 150 feet long to get the amount of light that needed to keep all those instruments and cameras going. So, well, we hope that you enjoyed this edition of Stay Curious, and don't forget, tomorrow we've got a great conversation with a guy I've met a couple times, Martin McClellan. He is an engineer working for Via Space, but we're going to have him talk about his years when he was a contamination engineer, making sure there were no bugs or germs in that Hubble telescope. And that'll be a fascinating story for you to hear tomorrow. And until then, I'm Marquette, and come back and see us to bridge the space between us.